There is a thin divide between what is perceived as spiritual and paranormal, for they are forever intertwined throughout time. Traveling within the history of the world, we can find examples of spirituality that involves everything from magic, spirits, gods and goddesses, and seers or people said to be able to speak to the dead. We all have our own belief systems. We all have our own truths. So let us possibly bend those truths a bit with some insights and perspectives that may be a bit different than yours, or even give yourself validation for what you see as true. Come sit with myself and the best of the best in research, teaching, discovery, and practitioners of the day. My name is Bear Medicine Walker, and I welcome you to Spiritually Paranormal. Well, hi everyone. Boy, it's been a moment since I've been doing this show, and I'm glad to be back. And I'm actually glad to be back with this dynamic duo from the Paranormal Concept Show. And I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to bring them both in right now. Hello, Miss Kerry Greenaway. How are you?
Hello, darling. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. Very well indeed.
Good. Let me grab Richard. Don't want to leave him in the dark. Hey there, Richard.
Oh, I'm here. I thought you'd forgotten all about me.
Oh, I could never do that. And I want to tell everybody, because we've got like oodles and oodles of people here leaving comments and saying hi to everybody. And I just want to make sure everybody out there knows I see them and we see them. And thank you for being here. It's been a moment. So there's been things going on, and it seems that you guys have been really, really super busy over on the Paranormal Concept show and in your private writings and stuff. And I follow the show. And okay, and I got to tell you, it's not a ghost in the house. Pip is behind the screen here, and if you hear jingle jangle, that's my bird. And she has always likes when we're on air for whatever reason, and she makes more noise than anything. So if you hear that, it's not a ghost, guys. It's just Pip doing her thing back there. So I apologize for that. She's just a little monster sometimes. Anyhow, you guys have actually used this time, and you've actually put a book together. So I'm going to go first to Richard, because when I look at all the stuff that you put out, Richard, with the show and the research you do and the things that you do to you've brought things up that I didn't even know about. So I'm amazed. So how do you go about deciding how to research and what you research?
Well, I think it's sort of research what you know, sort of what you sort of are interested in. I don't feel myself I sort of go too far out of my way. I've been interested now in the paranormal for quite a few years. I predate a lot of sort of like the youngsters that are in the paranormal. I suppose sort of looking back, I have been sort of like looking into this, researching it, sort of putting it into more of a practical sort of use now, what with the podcast and the writings. But I should imagine now it's been a good 40 years. So I was actually quite surprised myself, sort of quite how much I actually got to draw on and how sort of it's been received by other people.
I just, some of the stuff that you put out there, I'm just like, wow, how did he, this is so interesting. And folks, if you haven't, the book, and I'm going to put it up on the screen here so everybody can kind of see the book and what we're talking about, because they put this together, the Paranormal Concept Show Extra, and Paul Rook, who's not here because he's working, also contributed to this in their show. And I can't even tell you, it's been a really big help to me, because some of the stuff you've put up, Richard, because I've been not well, it's given me like really good things to read about and just kind of engulf myself in it. And I was so fascinated by some of the stuff you put up. So now, is this what's going on, Kerry, with the book? You guys kind of put all this stuff together that you guys talk about on the show, and then like what Richard and Paul and you, and mind you, Paul, I always call the scientific guy. Just saying, I love him, but he's always the scientific guy, right? And I always look at Richard, and Richard's the historical. I get the historical aspect from him, and then
I like that.
Yeah, and then Kerry, I get, she gives me the spiritual and kind of like the way I think of things, because it's how I work. So I get this great blend and balance from the three of you. So Kerry, how has this been working with these two guys, first of all?
It's the power of three, though, isn't it? When you think about it, it's the power of three, because we all do come at the topic from very different angles, and we all bring something different to the table. So we'll be talking like show ideas or concepts or whatever it is, because we do an awful lot of talking, the three of us. And out of that is born blogs. Out of that is born the shows that you get to listen to. Out of that and there's so much material that doesn't get used, believe it or not, of what we find out, and stuff like that. And the blogs themselves that have gone into the book are really extensions of the show. So they're not reiterating stuff we've already done on the show. These will be things we may have come across while researching that didn't quite fit the remit for the show, or our thoughts about certain things or concepts, or, and we all hit it from a different angle. So it is definitely the power of three. I've written a blog recently, funnily enough, called The Power of Three. So, so within that, when you look at any aspect of the paranormal, the umbrella term, the paranormal, we all kind of come at it from different angles, and it brings up so many interesting concepts off the back of that. And so the blogs are a reflection of what you hear on the show, but they don't necessarily make it onto the show, shall we say?
Well, I look.
Oh, she can't hear you. No, we can't hear you now, love.
How about that? Better?
Yeah, you're fine now.
Yeah. And you're back. Yeah, hit it.
Well, you'd probably be wishing I didn't unmute myself. But anyway, when I look at like what you guys do, Richard, I'll go with you. What is the strongest? What is your I redo that. What is your idea of the paranormal, and what are your beliefs of the paranormal? Is it just a subject, the paranormal, or do you have like rooted beliefs within that?
Well, it started off as sort of like a subject. Sort of, I was sort of like growing up, and I was interested in sort of slightly sort of fringe sort of like subjects, and the paranormal sort of really sort of slipped into that quite easily. I do have a quite strong interest in history, which I've sort of studied for a long time, and I do find having a good sort of sound knowledge and grounding in history, well, for me anyway, does complement the paranormal quite well. I mean, not so much sort of trying to sort of get things together, but it's the similar sort of like research processes involved, and they do complement each other quite well. For me, anyway, and originally when I started out, I mean, ghosts were sort of like, spirits of the dead, and everything was quite sort of rudimentary and what I thought it was. But since being involved with like Kerry and Paul over the sort of, I suppose, about 5 years now, sort of I've known them for about 5 years now, sort of it really gave me an opportunity to sort of meet on a personal level like-minded people, because it can be quite a solitary pursuit when you're the only one of your muggle friends that are sort of into this thing, and you don't have an outlet for it. But since sort of being involved with Kerry and Paul and the show in particular, it really has sort of made me take stock of what could possibly be going on. I've sort of, and I like to think I've moved away from sort of like the observation and stuff. I do believe there is something going on. I mean, that's out of the question, and for me, but I'm sort of looking at it more, the mechanisms that are causing this to go on. Sort of like, I always sort of bring this sort of thing up is of all the things we know about the paranormal, which you can argue is probably not a lot really. There is one defining factor, one very common element that keeps cropping up, is the individual, is you, or people around us, is the people that witness alleged paranormal activity. So for me, that is a very key component, and I think we may have to start looking into ourselves more of what's going on up here to see whether this is more involved than the paranormal being purely an external phenomena.
Well, I hit 60 this month, and when you and I were growing up, Richard, if we talked about this kind of stuff, we were kind of, at least we were kind of looked at as crazy, and I had many friends that kind of walked away and were like scared. And so times have changed, and I think people are more open to the idea. But I think part of it is the curiosity of, is this it, or is there more? I don't know. What do you think, Kerry? What is your, because you look at it from a totally different aspect, although you pull in like what Paul does and what Richard does too. But what do you think about, the as a whole paranormal?
I do have a belief system in spiritualism and spirits. So I do have a belief system. I also think that a lot of paranormal phenomena is created by self. We look at, and that spiritualist in itself, when you talk about manifestation techniques, that's you putting that out there and affecting an outcome effectively. And we've got loose evidence really to sort of show. You see it in your own life, you manifest something to happen. There are psychological things that we know have an effect. So I do think some of it is from self, but I don't think we should totally dismiss an external factor. I think when you're talking of paranormal, there are so many different factors you have to look at. The mechanism is right. I don't disagree. You have to look at a mechanism, but you can't dismiss that a lot of things that even within the human body, we can't always explain that. Do you know what I mean? So it's a powerful machine that we're running here on this earth individually. Collectively, there's probably something going on as well. I think there are a lot more factors to it, and I don't think you can pin it down to one specific area. I think you have to look at a lot of different areas to get some form of understanding of what paranormal activity could possibly be. It's not as simple as just saying, oh, it's telekinesis from a prepubescent child. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think it's a factor, but I don't think it's the only answer.
Well, I think we have to also understand as humans that scientifically, how do you measure the unknown spirit world, or if there's how do you measure that? You can't
even measure emotion, can you? You can't measure love. You can't measure happiness.
No.
They can get the chemical reactions that have gone off in the brain for that, but they can't measure how that made you feel, the extent, the intensity of that emotion. They can't record that. They can't measure it. So if you can't measure something as basic as a human emotion, then how can you possibly think of doing it for an external source? And it's little things like that that have got to make you question things. In my view.
Well, I'm gonna throw this out there, and I'm gonna get both your reaction from it. And I'm gonna go with you first, Richard. I had a client the other day, and I did a reading for her, and I had a little girl come through who gave me a name, clear as bell, and gave me a date. And I gave it to the client, and I said, I'm going to give it to you. But this little girl kept giving me like information. So this woman was writing it down, and came back an hour later and said, I can't believe it, but when I actually sat, it occurred 40 years ago. It was her best friend at that time's daughter who passed, and she had been a nurse, so she was there when she passed. That was her name. That was the year she passed. And the following year, the mother passed, but it was like over 40 years ago. Okay. So it took her a little bit. And I was like, okay, because I don't typically like to, I'm okay from a mediumship point of view. I still have that growth spot to go. 2019, I circled the drain 3 times. So I don't know if that kind of amped me up. Okay. When I had surgery, I don't know, but I'm sometimes like hold back because I don't want to give it. But this kid was so persistent that I gave her this information. So is that in my mind? And I'm not saying this so you disparage or, crap on anything. That's not what I'm saying. But is that like in my mind, or are there, and I know other people, and Kerry, you're one of them, you pick up on things as well. So how does that fit into this, Richard?
Wow.
Now there's a question.
Now there's a question. I don't think I've been asked anything like that before. Well, again, it certainly is interesting. I mean, it appears to indicate with certain people that they can pick up on this from other people or from the ether in general. I mean, it's certainly, you get people that will say, or that are quite spiritually attuned, and you will sort of like speak to them, and they do seem to be quite accurate when you sort of go to them. Not that I've ever sort of been to readings or anything. I've only ever had one, and that was actually Kerry. So I was sort of, half dismissive because she actually sort of knew me, but I don't know quite how to answer that. I've never sort of really looked into the full sort of like spiritual side like you're talking about there. But I do believe that certain people are quite adept at actually doing this.
It scares me. Okay, I can tell you, Richard, it scares the crap out of me sometimes, because when I've been sick, I literally have had spirit like here, and I see them with my physical eye as well as hear them. Not all the time. It depends on their energy. So I can tell you with certainty, for me, whether it was hallucinations or whatever, I had these people coming in when I contacted a dear friend of mine who's actually lives over by you guys, and she's been doing this for years. And she asked me, why is blah, blah, blah standing behind you? I go, thank you. I'm not going crazy. So, I mean, how does that just figure into being able to be measured, I guess, maybe? Kerry?
You can't measure it, but there are several theories going on here. So you've got one that there is actually a spirit there that's talking to you. And so you've got that one theory. You've got
another padded room.
Pardon?
I don't need a padded room.
No.
And that's for me.
That's one way of looking at it. But you have got other possible explanations of what's going on. Now, up here, we store a lot of information. And then they say that when we die, all of that goes. But does it? Does it kind of stay? And that's what we then pick up on. Another kind of theory would be, a form of all information from the family is stored. So whenever you've got somebody in living memory with that memory, that you can pick up that kind of information from that. So you've got lots of different possible explanations of what's going on there. How strong you pick it up is also down to how scientists have actually looked at the brain. There are different explanations, but I think one thing they all do agree on is that we are able to transmit at a certain point. We're able to make people, like, if you walk in the room and someone's angry, forget body language or anything, you pick that up. You can tell, no matter how cleverly they mask that, you can generally tell an atmosphere when you walk in a room or a house or something like that. And so they all kind of agree that the brain does kind of transmit to a degree. If you can transmit, then surely you should be able to receive as well. So if you look at all the different theories that are around, then it's not a clear-cut explanation. I don't think that this is a specific gift. I think everybody could do it if they tune themselves in a certain way. I also think it would depend on how you've developed as to whether, what skill you pick up, whether you can hear spirit, see spirit, get the taste, get the feelings, all of those sort of things. I don't believe that this is like for specific people out there. I think everybody has an ability of some form. It's just how you develop that, or whether you choose to develop that as well. For you, you've gone through some very traumatic surgeries. You've been through some very traumatic things that have happened to you. And that's kind of taken you out. We have a separation sometimes of physical body and conscious body. There seems to be able to be a separation. We see it with out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences. We see this, or, people have experienced this. People that can astral travel say they can experience that separation of body. And it happens when you have things like major surgeries and things going on. There seems to be able to be a separation between those. And again, that raises a million concepts in itself, doesn't it? You know what I mean? So when you start looking at all these different areas and you start thinking like that, if you're able to separate your consciousness, your soul, as it were, from your physical meat sack, that all the electrics and all that sort of thing goes on, that concept in itself is absolutely fascinating. And if you're able to do that, why does the life end then? If all you lose is the meat sack, then surely that suggests that you carry on in some form. And if you've got the ability to pick up on that, you're going to be seeing and hearing things. And that, but again, that's just several theories I've just chucked down onto the table there for a lot of people to mull over. But you see, this is where it opens up. It expands, doesn't it?
I was 4. My earliest memory is like when I was 4 or 5. And I thought everyone could see spirit. Everyone saw the pets that died. Everyone could see the energy off the trees and stuff. Okay, so get ready, Richard. Here comes another. Put your seatbelt on.
Okay. I'm gonna go down to Children in the Paranormal, Richard. Children in the Paranormal.
Okay.
Whole new concept there.
I worked at Children's Hospital in Detroit for many years, up in the ICU and HEMOC, which was the cancer wards. And I had children from 4 and 5 years old to teenagers. Okay. And I would go in and do my work with the kids. That was my job. And some of them, when they would be approaching, which we didn't even know at the time, they were approaching death, would say, "Oh, aren't the angels beautiful?" Or, "Oh," and this isn't anybody telling them this, or, "Oh, my papa's there." Okay, just for an instance. Okay. And I remember a particular little boy who was 5, and he was handling stuff fine. There was no like, he's going to go at any time. And this one day he just said, "Can you please help my mom?" And I said, "What are you talking about, Michael?" He said, and he was 5. I mean, and you got to remember, 5-year-olds are pretty talkative at that time, and he's like, well, the angels are here for me, and my mom doesn't want me to go, but I need to go. And I'm like having this conversation with a 5-year-old, and I'm like looking at him, and he said, don't you hear the angels? And I kind of, when you're working in that situation, you kind of have to tune a lot of stuff out, because in a hospital, as you would imagine, there's just a lot of stuff going on. And I looked at him and I said, you want to go? And he's like, I need to go. They're here for me. And I was like, wow. And he's like, can you talk to my mama? And I'm like, oh, this is a conversation I don't want to have with her. And I knew her, right? Okay. But how do you explain? I have my theories, but I'm going to ask you, Richard, how would you explain when younger people see like his papa coming for him, right? How would you explain that when children are like more aware, maybe, or not scared to talk about it? How do you explain? What's your thoughts?
Well, I would sort of go down the route. I mean, particularly children, and it is interesting. I sort of find sort of going off a slight sort of side. I would find reincarnation cases particularly compelling, more compelling with children than with adults, because adults, you can argue it backwards and forwards. It's sort of information they've picked up and throughout their lives. But children are quite interesting, and there's no reason why sort of they're more open-minded, and we're all sort of human, and as we get older, we sort of store a lot of background stuff, noise and stuff, and we all get older, more sort of cynical, sort of twisted and bitter, perhaps, like most people. But certainly children do appear to be more open conduits to emotion, to whatever it is sort of floating around out there in the ether. So that doesn't surprise me with your experiences, that you've had children sort of say things like these to you, which, I should imagine, it doesn't surprise me. So going from that, how are they tuning into this? Basically, because they're not told that it isn't real. They don't have, they haven't learned to sort of block it out yet. They're probably more of a natural receiver. They probably don't understand it, but you know what kids are like. They will say virtually what they see, and I think sort of more work should be done on this. I think there is a lot of work sort of done on it anyway. But there has to be someone better qualified than me to actually conduct it. But I'll go back to what I said at the first. I do find sort of particularly in reincarnation cases with children quite compelling, and it doesn't surprise me your experiences as well, whether the two are sort of related.
Kerry, what are you thinking?
I think children are born as blank canvases, aren't they? They're completely innocent. They're completely devoid of any belief system, of any culture or references. They've not got no society around them. They're not had any. They're completely blank canvas, and the only the things that get introduced to them by the family, by their society, by their parents' belief systems, that all comes later. That's a gradual process. They're like kids are sponges. They'll absorb everything. But those behavioral systems and those experiences only kind of get set, and I think it's around about 7 that really starts to kick in and really starts to take to effect. So before then, they're completely open. They're completely accepting of everything with no judgment on that. They haven't got like that sense of judgment. So if they see a spirit person come in, to them, it's just normal, right? Because they've got nothing to be fearful of. It's like you've got no fear because you're in this cosseted family unit. Generally, most children are. So that's kind of why all their senses and all their faculties are just so brand spanking new that they've got nothing that's. Their mind isn't shutting down areas because they've been told that's not happening, that's not real. The minute you start saying that to children, and they start taking that on board as a little sponge, they go, oh, okay, well, that's not real, fine, ignore that bit. And then they develop through into that, and then they start developing themselves and becoming their own little personalities and stuff like that. And then that takes on a whole new field. But you've got two things here. You've got the child being open and being this little blank canvas, but then you've got what you've just described as a near-death experience, or death experience just before death. And this doesn't just happen with children, this happens with adults as well, where people have basically died on like an operating table or under extreme circumstances and witnessed their relatives come to get them, or angelic beings, or the light, or things like that coming. So, which again suggests that there is something more, there is something after, that we do go on after this existence here. And then you do have tales, like Richard said, of where you have children born. They talk about a life that was previous to the one that they're living, that they recognize people where they lived, experiences they had before this life, things they couldn't possibly know. Again, it opens up a whole avenue of concepts. Your one story opens up a whole avenue of concepts that you can go down and explore. Each of them are huge in their own right. Each of them have had a huge amount of study work done on them by various people over the time. And this is what makes the whole, it's experience. You take one experience, you listen without judgment, and then you go off the back of that and go, okay, so what possibly could have gone on? For me, your story with that child, there's two different kinds of experience there. One, the child is open and experiencing phenomena for himself, spiritual activity surrounding him, but also that near-death experience that's gone on as well for him. So it's fascinating.
Well, I can tell you, I didn't have people waiting. They were behind the door, and I had a being, I'll just say, I won't say who, basically tell me I was bullheaded and get back to my body. It's like, get your ass back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want it right now. I want to see And he's like, oh no, get your butt back.
Not time yet.
And he's like, they told me you were bullheaded, but so I did. I started going back. And then the third time I went back again, he said, you have got to be kidding me. Get back. Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I didn't have that welcome here kind of moment. I got told to get my happy behind back to where I needed to be.
They kicked you out, didn't they?
Yeah. So, all right. So, how did you guys figure what to put in your book? What did you guys? How did you figure out what was going into this book? Kerry, you go first.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Sorry, Richard. When we do the blogs, it is left purely to individual to write what you want to do. Like, so for myself, generally, I'll be looking at concepts, and in the book, I talk about the dreamland, and I talk, what goes on in dreams, and I talk about the mysteries of the mind and smell, and there's a couple of tarots and some more spiritual blogs in there. So for me, when we first did this, when we were Parasearch Radio, and all the presenters would be writing blogs, and it just felt a shame to lose them, basically. So we compiled them into a book, the Book of Parasearch, which is still available on Amazon as well. And then when we went over to the Paranormal Concept Show, which was just the three of us, the blogs just come from like ourselves. Very autonomous in regards to the blogs, and we were putting them out there. But again, it feels like they get lost on the internet. So it was like, okay, so I don't want to lose this body of work that we've done, because it's so integrally tied to all of us, so we compile it into a book, then we delete them off the internet. They're not out on the internet anymore, these blogs.
Okay,
so if you want to read them, you have to buy the book.
Yeah, as Kerry says, Kerry has a sort of style of writing and what she sort of writes about. Myself, again, I tend to write what I know and stuff. It is quite well known that I enjoy going out on my little road trips and stuff, and I will sort of do location reports and I've been to, and I will sort of look into sort of more sort of like historical sort of oddities and mysteries. But this year I am sort of pushing that envelope a bit more and sort of going into sort of like the more sort of spiritual realm and looking at how belief systems can possibly affect, well, not so much affect, it's just what I try and do is to sort of tell people that we all have belief systems and stuff and try and accept them and try and, you know, at least acknowledge them when you're sort of looking into your work and stuff within the paranormal. That's sort of what I'm looking into now. But yeah, sort of me and Kerry have been sort of like experimenting at the start of this year, you know, sort of I'm sort of taking my tentative steps into the more sort of spiritual sort of realm, sort of with sort of like practice, sort of like a little bit of, only very tentatively practice a little bit of remote viewing and stuff like that. So this is a sort of area I'm sort of like heading down now, and it's good because it's new. So I feel that this year's sort of works, you know, there'll be from a new perspective, somebody who's exploring and hopefully you'll see a progression in that. You know, I've sort of for the last couple of years I've been doing a lot of dowsing, which is something I'm quite good at, actually. It was all something I picked up.
My kids got me for Christmas a new set of dowsing rods, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Yeah, both rods and pendulum, and I'm looking into doing some mat dowsing and sort of trying to incorporate that into sort of field research and stuff, and sort of, you know, try and sort of get locations before actually visiting locations. Try and sort of rely more on your intuition and what you're finding out using these sort of more sort of spiritual techniques.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I look at all my experiences from elders that I've, you know, of many cultures. When I worked down at the medical center, I worked side by side with docs that were coming in to study from around the world. And what I found is, even though the cultures are different, like they may call something different or approach certain things differently, they all have the same kind of core belief system. They may describe it with different words,
Yeah,
but it really truly is the same. Many cultures, well, no, I won't say many. I will say all cultures believe in spirit in one way or another. They believe in their ancestral spirits. All cultures use prayer in some form or another. They may not call it prayer, but that's basically at the root of what it is. So I look at all these different cultures, but what I find interesting is some of them are very much more accepting of the paranormal than others. So how is that? And I'll start with you, Kerry. How has that, or has it been something you've been aware of or experienced or watched or found interesting?
You are dead right. Sometimes it's just terminology. You'll find the same thing happening across different. And what is a prayer? It's an intention. And we talk about intentions in spiritual work all the time. You know, prayer is intention. So what you're saying totally makes sense, but it's down to belief system. So we come down to then your sociological influences. If you're brought up in a culture that's accepting of paranormal phenomena in whatever form that takes, you're going to be more accepting of it because it's something normal. It's not paranormal. If you grow up in a society that is specifically, and I would actually label it as maybe Catholic or Christian society, then you are kind of more indoctrinated into the fact of, oh my God, it's ghost spirit, don't go there, don't talk it, because the Bible says it so. don't converse with spirit. It says it, and it's drummed into you from a very, very young age. So you have to be very aware. And this is where what Richard was saying, that belief system that you're growing up with and that becomes part of you without you even necessarily realizing it. I mean, in the UK, we're all brought up with a Christian basis of belief system. If you go to school in the UK, I know that's changing slightly depending on where you go to school, but generally, it is a C of E belief system that you're brought up with, and you'd be surprised at how strong that actually is within you, without you even realizing it. And that's just one. We have multiple belief systems. And they overlay in our subs as well, in our subconsciousness, they overlay. So this is where, like Richard said, you have to be aware of them, acknowledge them. We're not saying you have to change them, but if you acknowledge them, acknowledge what that belief system is, where that came from, and kind of try to suspend that in regards to phenomenon, then it opens the doors a little bit wider for you.
Yes,
I grew up
there, Kerry. I mean, sort of like working with. All right.
I grew up Catholic, and I bucked the system the whole way, because when they would tell me, "Oh, well, Christ didn't have a wife," I'm like, "Who says?"
Bible says it's also it must be true.
You don't see ghosts. That's that's a sin. Well, yeah, but why is it a sin? You're telling me that the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. So why is that a sin? So that was my upbringing.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Richard. I didn't mean to cut you off.
The really strange thing about this is, funny enough, we've looked into religion and spirituality, and we're actually delving into that for next week's show, because their Bible in itself is actually full of paranormal phenomena.
Yeah. Who knew you were going to do that next week? I didn't. Just kidding. Go ahead, Richard.
We're looking forward to that one.
Go ahead,
what I find interesting, and as you pointed out there, you sort of strip down everything, all these different cultures, indigenous cultures and, more orthodox cultures, more structured and religious cultures. You strip them back. It does seem to be leading to some sort of core. It does seem to be directing to a specific point. So that would probably give the idea that this is coming from some sort of universal sort of start point, And once you distill it all down and get rid of all the periphery around it, all the man-made stuff we bolt on it, it does seem to indicate that it is sort of one thing. I mean, sort of Christians would obviously sort of say that's God, or and other cultures and native cultures will sort of put it on something else. But it does seem to be pointing towards a singular as opposed to sort of multiples. I wouldn't say sort of looking at it that way. I don't believe there's a pantheon where this phenomena comes. It is one phenomena.
I also think that as far as religion goes, over history, historical time, I believe it was sometimes put in ways to the people because they wanted to control. There were people in power that wanted to control. So they kind of manipulated things. But that's why I like looking into the core of that sort of thing, and the spiritual has been around since the dawn of time, I would imagine. I mean, there's got to be, with stuff that we found and historically, archaeologically, whatever you want to put it. So I don't know. It's always growing and always changing, and I think that's what keeps us fascinated as humans, because we don't want this to be it.
The $1 million question there. Well, one day we're all going to find out, aren't we?
Yeah.
we can
be sure when we're born of two things: taxes and death.
Yeah. There's something to look forward to.
So tell everybody where they can listen to your show or check your show out, because that's really super important. And if you guys are follow them or get a chance to listen in, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. They will keep your mind sharp. And actually, you guys have done stuff. I know. And Kerry, I was thinking about that the other day. I don't even remember how the heck we met. I know I was listening to your show at one point, but I was thinking about that because I feel like I've known you like all my life. So it's like, yeah. But tell everybody where they can catch the show.
She does have that effect.
Yeah, she does.
Like a barnacle. Once you meet me, you don't get rid of me.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't want to get rid of you. I don't want to. Tell everybody where they can find you guys. And then Richard, you tell us where they can get the book. Okay, so Kerry, you tell us about the show.
Okay, so the podcast, you can go over to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. It's on all the different streaming services out there, like, Shopify. It's not Shopify, it's Spotify. I always get them too muddled up. Spreaker.
We know what you were doing before this.
Spreaker. You can download the episode and listen there. Not just our show, but there's plenty of other shows on there as well. But Paranormal Concept, just Google that. You'll get plenty of our shows pop up on a Google search. Or you could go to paranormalconcept.com, where our latest show will be streaming on there as well. Socials, Paranormal Concept Show. Go find us on the socials. Yeah. We'll post a link up for the shows on all of there. So to be fair, you can't miss us if you want to listen to us. It will take you to a link where you can listen to us in many, many different platforms that are out there. But we are broadcasted through on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, as I say. And yeah, ours is the best, obviously.
It is. I
there are a few other little shows on there too.
Yeah, it's great. You guys have great chemistry. Okay, Richard, where can they get the book?
Well, it's not that complicated. We've only got sort of one outlet, and that is Amazon.com. So if you head over to Amazon, and it's also, we have direct links on our website, as Kerry said. That's www.paranormalconcept.com. So yes, it's available on Amazon as far as we're aware, worldwide. So your local Amazon.
Really thick book.
Ooh, look how thick it is. Ooh,
that ain't a little book. It's not a little book.
Yeah, no. Look how thick that is, guys. Okay, now I'm going to ask, because we've been like within the ghost dimension family, a lot of talk has been also about UFOs.
Yes.
So you guys, and I recall, and I'm knocking dust out of my brain right now, but I know you guys have talked and discussed them. Yes.
Yes,
we've done so.
What is give them an idea, Richard? Because I know Julie's here, and I know she's actually had some amazing footage and actually caught some crazy things recently over by you. Scary enough. You can keep them. I don't want them.
UFOs are interesting, and I know Kerry will agree with me. There's one thing me and Kerry sort of do tend to agree on. is I'm not a huge believer in the nuts and bolts theory of UFOs, that they're physical, they come from other planets. I mean, I'm more sort of interested in perhaps the multi-dimensional sort of aspects of UFOs, and quite possibly where they're coming from. And I believe they are more sort of to the paranormal than sort of extraterrestrial. I believe they are linked. There are sort of tentative research going on out there at the moment. Sort of there's been a few poltergeist sort of cases, famous ones, and they've sort of linked a few sort of anomalies in the sky as well. And certainly whenever we come out of lockdown, and that will be something I will be looking at when going out in the field. I won't be keeping my eyes on the environment around me. I will also research and take note of what's going on above, because I think that's an area that in the sort of like the paranormal community is not sort of touched upon. and I think that would be a good area of research to go down. But
Kerry,
yes,
you
they
seen them?
are.
Have you seen any, Kerry? Richard?
I've seen lights in the sky. Yeah, I used to live in Australia for a few years, and funny enough, they were very common there. I lived at the base of a long range of hills, and you know, which makes you sort of wonder: and is this in some areas, and is it geologically triggered? Because along the Adelaide Hills, you always got lights, and they were that common. People didn't really think anything of them. They think, oh, the Min Min have been quite active tonight, and it was pretty much accepted. you know, They say, yeah.
What about you? You've seen any or thought about that? No?
No, don't
No,
ask
it's one
Kerry,
area. No, to be fair, this is one area of the ufology world that actually scares the pants off of me. The fact that somebody could come from God knows where and take you, whether it be physically or whether it be your soul from your body, and do tests on you. The whole thing just scares the life out of me. I don't discount there's something going on in that world. There's something. What that is, I think a lot of what is witnessed is natural. I think it's a natural phenomena. I do think that. I see a lot of things that I go, the problem with this world is the footage is crap. No disrespect to anybody out there, but it's awful. You can't make out head nor tail of what's going on. And sometimes people are not very, there's so much CGI now, there's so much now that it's very difficult to understand what's going on. When you take it right back and you look at something like the Mothman prophecies and the phenomena that John Keel was looking at and stuff like that, it does become incredibly immersed, and it does seem to run along like with conspiracy. And I don't like conspiracy theory because I think that's 1 + 1 = 5, but in some instances. So it's a very murky world, ufology, in a way that I can't seem to get my head into, and I don't like, quite frankly. Multidimensional makes more sense to me than somebody traveling hundreds of millions of miles from one planet to the next. But then, having said that, the technology to jump between dimensions would be just as immense as traveling 1 million miles in space. So again,
and yet spirit does it every day.
But it's ethereal, isn't it? It's not nuts and bolts. It's ethereal.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. Well, we have them in Michigan. We have them. I mean, there have been many sightings, and where I live up in the woods, surrounded by big bodies of water, they're often over the woods and the big lake that you see them. I have seen them. I have seen them here on my lake.
I don't want to see them.
Scared the poop out of me. Okay, scared the poop out of me. 2010, I literally called 911 because I had this thing on the lake, and it was it wasn't a drone. It was too big to be a drone. Weird lights. And it was in winter in February. It was 2010. I'll never forget it. It scared the poop out of me, Kerry. It came to the back of my house and it glowed. I called 911. They called the Air Force Base, which is an hour and a half, 2 hours away from me. Nothing. The state police called like the weather, for weather balloons. Nothing. They actually came out because they were getting phone calls like crazy. It was here for 2.5 hours. I can tell you, I got somebody on the phone and I wouldn't let them hang up because I was by myself and it was nighttime.
God, I would have been absolutely petrified, Bear.
I was on the floor in the bathroom where nobody could see me by windows. And every time I'd look out, it would move, and it was hovering, but it was like doing one of these things, but the lights were going around, and the way it was moving, I mean, we had several Air Force bases here in Michigan, okay? And I have seen the stealth bomber come out when they've done maneuvers and stuff. This was nothing like it. The cops were freaked out. So I was like, yeah, okay, I believe. Well, and then if you look into native culture has always believed. If you can go back to cave dwellings, and they're on the side of cave dwellings. So yeah, that's like, yeah, Kerry, I'll send them when they come next time. I'll send them to you.
No, thank you.
It's funny you should say that, especially with Bodies of Water. That is sort of, we interviewed Chris Damaris when we done, who is a MUFON. He works for MUFON, and bodies of water are very common in UFO sightings. They say it is probably one of the major ingredients, if you like, for a UFO or unidentified aerial phenomena sighting, which is quite interesting in itself, because you look through sort of myths and legends, you go back, I mean, particularly here in the UK and Europe, and probably America as well, you have Will of the Wisps and sort of like lantern men that sort of and so these lights have been known about to sort of be generated around sort of big pools of water, lakes, and especially where you are, Bear, Michigan. I suppose you border onto the Great Lakes up that way.
Yeah, it's like it's like 100 clicks down the road for me. So it's like, I have the big lake that way, and I have my lake here. So I'm like right in the middle of the water. We also have gypsum here. They mine gypsum here. So to me, I'm also interested in the mineral source and in the magnetic whatever that's going on. I don't know. I just know they weren't getting me. I was hiding in the bathroom.
But you said that, you did say across cultures you see what possibly in regards to interpretation could be references to ufology. We see it in certain paintings to do with, even with Christianity, people interpret that as a possible ufology. There is even the story of the two aliens coming down, mine for gold, make us a slave race, change our DNA, want to get off planet. One of them turns around and says, we finished with this slave race now, we'll cause a great big flood. The other guy says, maybe not. Noah story, just saying. There's that theory out there as well. So, even within that, it's again, fascinating interpretation of possible history, possible interaction with alien beings. I mean, we've spoken to two spiritual leaders. One was a shaman, another was worked with crystal skulls. Both of them talking about alien. We spoke to somebody who does channeling the other week, talking about connecting and speaking, channeling an alien, what we class as an alien. Do you know what I mean? Having intelligent conversation about the state of the world and why they haven't interfered. One of them even said there was a galactic, multiple aliens, but we are just not evolved enough yet to join that. And and you sit there and you think, oh my God, right? Scary thought for me. It's like, oh my God, no. But then on the other hand, if you think about that as a concept, these are people that don't know each other.
Yeah,
we're talking to people all around the world. One was English, one was American. This other guy was in a different part of America, completely different, separate fields of research, or working in spiritually in completely different fields, saying the same thing. Now, either they're all reading the same material, and when you realize how big a source that is, the material that's out there, you then think, or is there something else going on? And that's where it leads you. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Well, look at the pyramids, and then look at the Mayan culture and the Aztec culture. Even though their pyramids were different, the technology and tools to build those, and yet back then, they don't even have the technology we do now. So how did that happen? And where did it go, right? Once it was built. Like, that's why I look like Atlantis, which is one of my favorite topics that I don't delve into often on air, but I believe there was an Atlantis. It might not have been called Atlantis, but I believe that they were far superior than other people of their time. And how did they get there? I mean, how did they get there? I mean, I just don't. It's mind-boggling for me.
Yeah, there certainly is sort of like a sort of theory, which is sort of taking on, you know, that there was a quite an advanced pre-flood civilization, you know, and a lot of serious sort of scholars are sort of looking into this. I know I tend to read the work of Graham Hancock and his work around, again, you know, you mentioned the word Atlantis in the academic field and everyone just scatters, you know, but there certainly does seem to be some evidence that there was. And when I say advanced, not so much sort of like the New Age advance, they were all whizzing around in spaceships, but technologically, there was an event that happened that sort of like wiped the sort of like slate, and we had to start again. And they're looking that this possibly could have happened about 12,000 years ago at the end of the Younger Dryas period, when there was a series of comet impacts. And again, you read sort of ancient legends and folklore sort of stories, and particularly from the indigenous people around the world, and they still hold this sort of story that there was a cataclysm that happened whilst we were actually here on the planet. You know, something did happen.
I don't know. It to me, it's just simply all fascinating. It blows my mind. But that's why I love you guys so much, because you guys dig into all that stuff. And I just want to thank you both. I can't believe we've been here over an hour already. And we could probably go on for 3 more, I swear to God. And if Paul was here, it would be even more interesting, which we'll have to do when he's available. So I want to thank you both for coming. I want to thank everybody, who's watching and listening to our insights today. And I hope you go out and get their book. Again, their book is amazing. Their podcasts are amazing. Make sure you guys check them out. The Paranormal Concept Show. Thank you both, Kerry and Richard, for being here today. I love you both dearly. And till next time,
Pleasure,
guys.
Bear.
Peace out. Peace out. All right. Love you both.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today, and remember to tune in again next time here on Spiritually Paranormal. Remember also to share, like, and subscribe, and become part of a growing family on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. My name is Bear Medicine Walker, and I approve of this message.